Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Turning Time or wherever you watch and listen to your podcast, as always, it's a privilege to have you along, especially during these difficult times. As we're filming this, Eretz Yisrael is still under attack, and we're fighting desperately to be able to remove these terrorists who are trying to destroy us. And Kodesh Baruch Hu should watch over all of our soldiers and watch over all of our civilians and watch over all of Klal Yisrael around the world. I heard this one non-Jewish commentator speaking. His name was Douglas Murray, and he said, frankly, I think it's safer to be in Israel right now than to be in downtown London if you're a Jew. And I thought that was interesting. So there's terrible things happening all over, and Kodesh Baruch Hu should have Rachmanis on us and give us Yeshua quickly. Now, I don't know how many of you noticed that we didn't have an episode last week. And the reason is that we are out of funding. And the way the Rabbi Orlofsky show is going now is that we have production costs. We didn't used to. Michal did everything on his own, and then he decided to go off and get married. Well, what can you do? But everyone has their own cheshbonos, I guess. But we Pasha didn't have the money to do the production. So as you may have noticed, in addition to the website and the Facebook page, we also have a WhatsApp group. And so the new producer, Yisrael, reached out to the WhatsApp group and just said, we don't have the funding to continue. And Baruch Hashem, we got a few sponsorships to carry us through. But this is at best a Band-Aid on a problem. We're going to need some regular funding. So if you have thought about sponsoring a Rabbi Orlofsky show, or if you have not thought about sponsoring a Rabbi Orlofsky show, this is your opportunity too. Because there's somebody who does this show where he gets on all kinds of important people, but he's very wealthy, so he can afford to do everything himself. Ich bin nicht der Gever. I'm not a Gevir, so I can't afford to keep this going. So we're reaching out to you, please, if you would like to sponsor an episode. So we had a sponsorship from the WhatsApp group, which is sponsored by Anonymous in order for the show to continue. That's the reason that they're sponsoring the episode, just because there's no special occasion. Yeah, it's not a birthday or an anniversary. It's not a yahrzeit. It's not a refuah shlema. It's just the schus that we should be able to continue bringing you this type of programming that Baruch Hashem gives chizuk to so many people. Some people out there know just also a personal situation. So I just wanted to share an update for those who happen to be informed. I was having trouble breathing. Every now and then I would feel this tightness in my chest and have trouble breathing. For the past 6 months, I just assumed it was a panic attack. So I figure I am crazy. So, you know that, you're watching this. So I figured I was starting to get panic attacks. And my wife made me go to the doctor, and the doctor sent me to my cardiologist, and he says, no, it's probably your heart. And they did a bunch of tests, and it turned out that I had a blockage. So I went in for a procedure where they first went in through my hand, and after about an hour, they said, well, that's not going, so let's go in through the thigh. And I said, no, absolutely not. And he whispered to the nurse, knock him out, So I woke up a while later, they were already inside of my leg. And so they were very happy. They said one of my arteries, they already replaced 2 of them. So the other artery was clogged in like 3 places, and they put in a bunch of stents and balloons and things. And he was very happy. And he was very happy. He felt that he really did a good job, and that I'm going to feel much better. I don't know when that's going to happen exactly, but as long as the doctor's happy, I'm happy. So, Baruch Hashem, the procedure was a success. And, so Baruch Hashem, I know there were some people who knew about it, some people were davening, so thank you very much. I remember when I had 10 years ago my heart attack and bypass, I met people all around the world. The news spread, and they said, we were davening for you. I said, well, it worked, because the person who did the angiogram the last time, which, by the way, was not as painful and went very quickly, he looked at me and said, I don't know why you're still alive. So, this guy didn't waste his time with that. He was just going to fix the problem, and he just went in. And he said, really, you probably could have used a bypass, but they don't like to keep opening you up. You know what I mean? And it's probably not a good thing. So so that's why he really worked very hard to get it out. It's usually, an hour and a half procedure. I was there for 4 hours. So, but he was very happy. So, Mirza Hashem, I will live a long, sick life. Chafetz Chaim once said, Arichas Yamin has nothing to do with gesund. It says you can live a long, sick life. So my mother was in terrible health till 89 when she was nifteris, and she was in terrible health. But, she held on, had her marbles, But anyway, so I may at some point, just to be on the safe side, film the last podcast of the Rabbi Orlofsky show. So in case things go south, I'll have a chance to say my goodbyes to everybody. Bye-bye. Anyway, but Mitzvah Hashem, that won't be for a while. So hopefully we'll all stick around together through good times and bad times. Okay, we're talking about Shabbos. This is actually the third installment in our Shabbos series. And we know that a number of Gedolei Torah have been speaking about the importance of being mischazek Shabbos during these days. The attack took place on a Shabbos Yontif, and there were stories of people who, because of their shmiras Shabbos, were saved from this tragedy. And in Mitzvah Hashem, we will use the schus of Shabbos to bring us into the Shabbos of the world. And we'll talk maybe in the next podcast about the tefillas of Shabbos. But I want to deal with something that I think is more fundamental. Yeah. And that is, there are people who have all kinds of different ways of avoiding the fact that they have to keep Shabbos. There are people who say things like, Shabbos is a day of rest, and I rest by playing golf. We rest by going to the pool, It's a day of rest. We enjoy ourselves, Obviously, malacha is not the same thing as avoda. Malacha is I remember when I was teaching in Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Dr. Dovid Gottlieb came out to me at one point, and he was very upset because he noticed that when it comes, the art school translates it as work. And he said to me, how many problems have we had trying to differentiate the idea of malacha and work, and they go and translate it as work and just, make it more difficult for us, I've never really gotten myself worked up over a art school translation, but some of these English translations, pre-bitna, pre-bitna, which is a reference to children. So I saw an old translation translated as fruit of the womb. It's a brand of undergarments, fruit of the womb. Anyway, but okay. But we understand that it's not a question of not doing work, because as everybody knows, if there's no Erev, you can't carry a handkerchief in your pocket. That's a malacha. But if you have people coming over for a shir, you can go down into the basement and schlep up all the chairs and set them all up for the people. That's okay. That's not a problem. So it has nothing to do with that. But because of the malachas of Shabbos, there are people, particularly younger people, who've developed a negative attitude toward Shabbos, right? They look at Shabbos as a bunch of don'ts. I can't do this. I can't do that. Yeah. Mordechai Becher tells a story that he was staying once someplace in an Asian hotel, and they put him on like the 40th floor. And he walked down the 40 floors to go and daven in shul. And he was almost out the door when he realized he forgot his talis. Now me, I would work with the assumption they probably have one in shul, but not Rabbi Becher, and also he's in very good shape. So he ran up the 40 flights of stairs to get his talis, and then ran back down. And someone from the hotel saw him and said, "Why didn't you use the elevator?" And he says, "Because it's my day of rest." So obviously there's something else going on here. And with all of the negatives, person looks at this from the point of view of, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I find that this infects the way people look at Shabbos. When I was running NCSY in Long Island in the 1980s, so sometimes we would do Shabbatonim for totally secular kids who had no idea what Shabbos was. And sometimes we would do them in an Orthodox community. And the kids were mostly yeshiva day school kids. Yeah. And there was a dramatic difference because in NCSY, the idea of a Shabbaton is that Shabbos is one of the best ways of showing people the beauty of Judaism. And these kids come, they have no idea what Shabbos is, and they spend the Shabbos. There's singing, there's dancing, there's, all kinds of things. I remember we were doing a Shabbaton once in South Shore, and Rabbi Lefkowitz, the Rebbitzin says, "This is nice, but they should see a real Shabbos." And Rabbi Lefkowitz says, "Why? Let them think this is what Shabbos is. Singing, dancing, people having a great time. Why should they know what it really is?" So we use Shabbos. Anyway, as Shabbos begins to end, there's a tremendous opportunity to take advantage of the last times of Shabbos. And so they have Shalosh Shudas. Now, it's not that much dissimilar to what they do in yeshivas. Very often in yeshivas, by Shalosh Shudas, they sing a lot of Dveikus type of nigunim, and one of the Rabbeim says a Musa Shmuz, So we do it a little different. We have what's called Shabbos ebbs away. It's called ebbing. Yeah, the people who speak are ebbers. You know what I'm saying? So there's different ways of doing it. Sometimes one person does it. Sometimes three different people do it, And everybody gets together in a big circle, and somebody speaks and they sing, and someone speaks and they sing, all these kind of like Dveikus Nigunim. It's really a very powerful program. And then they daven Ma'ariv, and then they have Havdalah, and Havdalah is a major deal in NCSY. They sing songs. Some places they use the band even at this point, Hine Kel Yeshua Yeah, and people are singing it, dancing, and then that's really the most dramatic talk of the entire Shabbos. It's very powerful. It's not unusual for Shabbos to end an hour later than the time that's written in the calendar. And when you do this for secular kids, they don't really care. Especially when you consider that most of the Shabbatonim are between November and March before they change the clock. So Shabbos is going out at 5:30, at 6:30, Okay, so you go a little later. But when I do it for Orthodox kids, as soon as we're within a half an hour of the Zman when Shabbos ends, they keep checking their clock. I mean, you're not going to finish after the time. Now, this is not Yom Kippur where you're fasting. You know, I mean, we don't want to drag out the end of the davening because everyone's hungry. It's Shabbos. What if it goes a little longer? What's going to happen to you? It underlies a principle that people don't like Shabbos. And they're waiting for it to be over so that they can go and have a good time. So today, of course, when people are addicted to their phones and their email and their social media, so, okay, they have to wait for Shabbos to be over. It's like a smoker who has to have a cigarette right away. They have to get onto their phone. They have to check their social media, you know. But even without that, people just were waiting for Shabbos to be over. They did not find this an enjoyable experience. So what are all the negatives for? Why are there all of these malachas that we can't do? So I want to try to address that. And I'm put into a context. There's something very strange, and we've talked about this in past years, I know, but I'm putting it now in the context of the Shabbos series. So those of you who listen to all of my podcasts and chazer over them and remember them, I have met you. I love you, but you make my life more difficult. Because there's an old expression, and that is, you can repeat a joke once every 3 years. You can repeat a story once a year. And a Dvar Torah, you can even repeat it in the middle of the shir that you're giving. So I, you know, but what can I do? I have, you know, Rabbi Orlofsky crazies. You know who you are. I have met you. Many of you come over with pride and you start reciting to me verbatim from various podcasts and shiurim. I don't remember what I say. And I had a guy, a good friend, and you know, comes to all of the different things, and he came to be part of the audience in the live podcast, which, by the way, is an option if you're in Eretz Yisrael. Contact me; I'll tell you when we film, and you can sit here and be the person who claps, you know, at the beginning. Anyway, so I was. I think I was filming 2 back-to-back podcasts, you know. Anyway, I did my first podcast, and he says, I heard every single thing that you said already. I said, all right. Get a new podcast, I made up all new stuff. You know, I mean, I can do that. I just happen to think most of the things, first of all, I think most of the things that I've said are absolutely brilliant. And as Henny Youngman once said, there are no old jokes, only old audiences, you know. So, you know, people are always trying to reinvent the wheel when the fact of the matter is that if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? And that's why Rabbi Orlofsky tells the story where he was talking to a guy who was a Rebbe teaching Kriya to little boys for 40 years. He says, how do you not get burnt out? He says, what do you mean? I'm giving people the gift of reading. That's such a wonderful thing. He says, but you're doing the same thing. Kametz Aleph, Kametz Beis, Kametz Gimel. He goes, not to this kid. To this kid, it's the first time he's hearing it. And that's what I look at. You know, I'm looking at the person who's enjoying the experience. So when I was a magician in my youth, I think for my 12th birthday, my mother bought me a magic set, and I had about 10 years when I was practicing magic until they caught me. But I would do different tricks and shows and things. I was okay. I wasn't a great magician, but I did it. But there was a principle. I read a number of the books, and there's a principle called doing tricks for magicians. What does that mean? It means everyone knows how this trick is done, and it's a tremendous trick. But magicians know how it's done, so they're not being fooled. So a person would come up with a new method that would fool a magician, but it may not even be as effective for the audience. So, for example, in Abbott's Encyclopedia of Rope Tricks, which I think I still have someplace. He has a whole chapter on cut and restored rope tricks. Most people are familiar with this. You take a rope, you cut it in half, you tie it up, presto changeo, and it becomes whole again, right? There's a classic method that everybody who ever bought a magic set knows how to do, yeah? So he comes up with 20 different methods. I'm exaggerating. 10 different methods to do the same trick. And none of the effects are as good as the original, but it'll fool that one magician in the audience who knows how it's done. So that's why when you're giving over shiurim, also you try to do tricks for magicians. Talk to the people who are there, who need to hear the information, as opposed to trying to be, too clever by half and try to impress everybody. You ever go to a Sheva Brachos where somebody gets up to speak, and he spends the whole time looking at the Rav of the Rosh Hashiva, and he's saying this whole Lamdasha thing, and the Rosh Hashiva's like nodding along, and nobody in the room knows what's going on. You're not doing anybody any favors. You know what I mean? Talk to the people. I've told this story in the past. Yeah. There was this education expert who was talking to a bunch of teachers and said, "What's your name and what do you teach?" I'm Susie. I teach math. I'm Harry. I teach science. I'm Karen. I teach English. Whatever it is. And when he was done, he says, "Gee, nobody here gave the right answer. You teach students." And people get caught up with, what they're saying. Is Rabbi Lemel, Shalom, who was in Hebrew Academy of Long Beach for many, many years, and he retired here. And so he always used to say to me, he says, Darshanim have to read the pasuk differently in Hallel. Einayim lahem v'lo ra'u aznayim. It's supposed to be Aznayim lehem, Einayim lehem v'lo ra'u, Aznayim lehem v'lo yishmo. He says they should learn they have eyes, but they don't see the ears. To know whether or not people are doing it. I've mentioned this in the past when I give my online shiurim, that I always encourage people, please turn on your cameras, because if I'm just looking at a bunch of blank screens, so I don't know, are you getting what I'm saying? You're not getting what I'm saying? Is it effective? Is it not effective? And I'm just sitting there talking to myself. It's much less effective than if I see there are people there and there's an interaction. It's a whole different thing. Otherwise, I don't even need to give the shiur. I could just record it and put it up, and you could listen to it there. Anyway, I digress. So there's a very strange thing, and that is the Torah spends an enormous amount of time talking about the Mishkan, Truma Tetzaveh, and then, since it was so much fun, V'Yaakov Akudei, half of Kisisa. All of it goes into how to build and maintain this temporary structure in the desert. Yeah. Okay, so some of the principles are applied to the Beis HaMikdash, but a lot of them were Mishkan specific, and for that particular period of time. And we spend enormous 4.5 parshios discussing it. Whereas Shabbos, we don't know anything. It just says, keep the Shabbos. We don't know what that means. Yeah? So everybody knows, the Gemara says, the Hekesh in Parshas V'Yakel, it tells us, it puts Shabbos next to the Mishkan to tell us that what you're not allowed to do on Shabbos is what they did in the Mishkan. And so you go to Gemara Shabbos and it says, okay, where was this in the Mishkan? Where was that in the Mishkan? And they spend the time going into the construction of the Mishkan to try to figure out what went into it, how it went into it. Am I chayiv only in the way it was done? Am I chayiv in a different way? And an enormous amount of effort is being put into the understanding of the construction of the Mishkan and then shtelling that back to Shabbos. Now, it seems to me, right, even if you want to say that the Mishkan was learned out for everything you need for the Beis HaMikdash and Mishkan Shiloh and everything that went into it, okay. So first Beis Hamikdash and Shiloh and the different places the Mishkan was set up was 850 years. Go 40 years in the Midbar. Okay, you have 890 years. Add 420 for the next Beis Hamikdash. Yeah. So you're talking about a minority of Jewish history where the Beis Hamikdash ever even existed, or the Mishkan. Majority of the time, not. Whereas Shabbos comes every single week for over 3,300 years. So I would argue, teach me all of Hilchas Shabbos in the Torah, and then say, and by the way, build a Mishkan. And then you can put that into a Brisa, Melechas HaMishkan, and tell me everything I need to know about how to build the Mishkan. But the Pasuk should be telling me about Shabbos. Isn't Shabbos more important in the life of a Jew? It comes every single week. It's so incredibly important. My Rabbi Orlofsky mug, it's making its return. So let's understand what this means. God created the world in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh day. What did he do? Went out for a couple of drinks with his friends. He says, I can't believe the week I had. What'd you do? I made the entire universe. Really? Yeah, sure. Was it hard? No, not really. I said 10 expressions. I spoke 10 times. Yeah. Vayior. Yeah. Stuff like that. He says, wow, doesn't sound like it was such a tough week. You really need a vacation now? Because, what does that mean? So obviously it doesn't mean that God rested because he was tired. Resting, Shavas v'inafash means it comes to rest. It means the thing stops moving and lands, i.e., in Nefesh HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin brings a mashal to explain the relationship between the three parts of the soul that we access on a regular basis, known as Naran, abbreviation Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh. And he says, picture a glass blower. Takes a tube, puts it into molten glass, and blows through the tube and expands the kli. When I was a kid, in old Bethpage, they had a Revolutionary era village, and I watched them, do glass blowing. It's liquid. They put in the tube and they blow and make the kli. On the island of Murano, outside of Venice, I had the schus twice to go with the Frieds and the Sivas Tours, and got to watch them do glass blowing and make things out of the glass as they went along. But he says the person takes a breath, blows it through the tube, it expands and comes to rest inside of the glass kli. So the breath, the neshama, that's the neshima, the breath. When he blows it through the tube, that's the ruach. And when it comes to rest inside of the kli, that's the nefesh. From the Lashon Shavas v'yinafash. Well, it doesn't mean that he rested, like a person rests when they're tired. It means that he stopped creating. And therefore, what do? We work for 6 days, and on the seventh day, we stop creating. Now, Hashem created the universe. So I have to tell you the truth, that's really very easy for me because I can go weeks without making as much as an asteroid. So what does it mean that he rested from creation? So Hashem can't tell us to rest from creating. We don't create. We don't make worlds. We don't have that power. So Hashem gave us our own world to create called the Mishkan. And if you look in the Mefarshim, they explain how every aspect of it corresponds to the world. As Rashi says, there were 50 loops and blue loops on each side, and there were gold hooks that held them together. Those are the stars in the sky. And so everything that went into the creation of the world went into the creation of the Mishkan. And that's what Rashi says. It says, B'tzael was mitzaref chof beis osios to create the Mishkan. What does that mean? He used the letters to create the Mishkan. The Mishkan was made out of wood and gold and, cloth. It means that the Mishkan had the powers that went into the entire world was put into the Mishkan. So I'll tell you Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes says there are 4 levels of creation, 4 separate planes of existence. It's known by the Kabbalistic abbreviation Abiyah, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. And if you're even slightly Kabbalistic savvy, you don't have to be even into Kabbalah, just the Ramban makes reference to the Esser Shmiras. You don't even need the Ramban if you have an art scroll sitter. When you say Shmiras HaOmer, it tells you the Shmira for each one of those weeks and each day of the week. So you know that starting on the top, it's Keser, and then comes Chochmah and Bina. And then in descending order, it's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. So there are these 10 Shmiras. And says the Sfas Emes, there are 10 Shmiras in each one of the levels of Abiyah. Each one has its own level of existence. So altogether, that comes to 40. And he says this explains a very strange thing if you think about it. Because what does the Mishnah and Shabbos say? It says, it doesn't say there were 39 malachas. We all know Lamed Tes malachas. It doesn't say that. It says 40 minus 1. That's a strange way to put it. So why would you say 40 minus 1? Just say 39. So the Tosfos Yontif says, because that's the way we talk. Right? When there is a Torah expression for a number, we use that. And since by giving someone malchus, lashes, it says you give 40, which is really 39. So it's really, you don't say 39, you say 40 minus 1. So too by the malachas of Shabbos, which are 39, we say 40 minus 1. The Sfas Emes says no. Because the malachas of Shabbos completely parallel the creation of the entire universe. Physical and spiritual. All of the underpinnings. And all of that power went into the Mishkan. And so the 39 actions that we did in the making the Mishkan directly correspond to the 39 spheres that went into the creation of Abiyah of our universe. Except for one. And that's Yesh Ma'ayin. That we can't do. We can't make something out of nothing. But everything else is not a problem. Everything else we can do. And every one of those malachas correspond to one of those levels that went into the fabric of creation. Now, I can't line them up for you. I don't know. I mean, it's Kabbalistic and I can't reveal it. Phew, that was a good save. Anyway, but the point is that these are things that when we are told not to do these malachas, these aren't just stam malachas. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that these things correspond to the fabric of the universe. And so like HaKadosh Baruch Hu rested from creating the world, when we stop from creating the Mishkan, we are stopping to create the world that we were given. That's what the malachas are. It's not just that we're not doing something, random. It's we're actually becoming like HaKadosh Baruch Hu and resting from creating our world that was given to us to create. A new world, a whole separate existence in the Mishkan. Yeah? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave that to us to be a separate world. A whole new world for me and you, right? Okay. So that's what goes into the malachas. It's an amazing thing because it seems when you're learning Hilchos Shabbos, so random, so many different things, a lot of halachas. A lot of halachas, and to get it down. As someone said to me once, I don't think anybody really knows what Bora is. Every Shabbos, I see people going, is this Bora? Then they do it anyway. Because to know Hilchas Shabbos is a very important thing. Person has to understand that I'm not just, when I'm saying being Mechal Shabbos, it means that I'm going against what HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself chose to do by stopping creation. And we have that opportunity as well to stop the creation, to be able to become godlike. And this is a very important point. I said this once to Rabbi Brown. I had the schus to hear Shurim by Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, but not as much as he did. He was much more dedicated than I ever could be. The day of his daughter's wedding, he went to Rabbi Moshe Shir, and Rabbi Moshe says, what are you doing here? You have a wedding to prepare for. And he said to him, you don't understand, this is my life. It's my life. So I said to him once, I said, I've started saying over something that I've heard from Rabbi Moshe many times. And I'm still terrified every time I say it. And he said to me, I've heard it many more times than you, and I also say it over, and I'm also terrified. It's a very important concept. God did not create us to be a creation. God created us to be a God. When he says to Adam HaRishon, here is the world, now you're in charge, don't destroy it. It's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu basically gave it to Adam HaRishon, not that he should serve Hashem, but that he should be Hashem. In Perek Chavav in Mesilas Yesharim, when he talks about the level of Kedusha, where the Gemara in Tainus says there are three keys that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. One of them is Tchias HaMesim. But he gave it over to Eliyahu. He gave it over to Elisha. How could you give him over if only Hashem has him? It says there was so Dovid by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was holding it. So when we keep Shabbos, we are becoming like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a very, very deep idea. And, we sell ourselves short by thinking that we're so small. This fellow came to see Rav Moshe once. He wasn't a frum person, but someone brought him to Rav Moshe. And he says, I view the world as if we were put into this world to help people. And he said, no. That's why dogs are here. That's why cows are here. That's why the stars are here. You're here to be God, not to serve people. It's a whole different level of understanding and existence. And when we accept upon ourselves the malachas of Shabbos, that's what we're saying. Okay, so I don't want to get too esoteric. This was a little esoteric, but I think it's an important concept. But let's go into another level. I used to explain this by saying the following. There's something called a radio. I don't know if anybody even knows what it is today. Yeah. There's a radio. And I'd say to people, there's beautiful music playing in the room right now. Does anyone hear it? From time to time, people would say, yes, I hear the music, and I would give them a referral to a mental health professional. You can't hear the music, but I'm telling you that there's beautiful music playing. It's radio waves moving through the air. Some of the most beautiful music that's ever been written, and rap. It's moving through the world right now, but you can't hear it. Why? Because you don't have a receiver. So I get a radio, and I say, oh, now I have a receiver. I don't hear the music. Got to turn it on. No, turn it on. I just hear static. It says, because you have a tuner where you're supposed to tune into the station and remove all of the static, and now you can hear the music. Now, to be fair, there's still two other things you have to do. One is you have to listen. If you turn on the radio and leave the room, you're probably not going to appreciate the music. And the second thing you have to do is possibly take a course in music appreciation. Because if you don't appreciate music, if your idea of great music is da 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 dum bum 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 ba dum bum ba dum bum, you're probably not going to appreciate, great symphonies. When you study music and you see how the 1812 overture, you can hear the battle, boom, You can hear the cannons. You can hear the horses. It's unbelievable. Or the William Tell overture. You hear the hoofbeats or the flight of the bumblebee. So music has the ability to convey things, but if you don't know what you're listening to, it's like, this doesn't do anything for me. So every seventh day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends a wave of Kedusha over the world, but you don't hear it. Why? Because you're not turning on your radio. Now turn on your radio. I'm only hearing static. Why? Because you're busy with so many other things, you can't hear the music. So Hashem says, listen, don't drive, don't go shopping, don't cook, don't answer your phone, don't go to the computer. Ben Shapiro was saying, he had been in Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot, and he went back for Shmini Atzeres. And he didn't know what was going on in Israel because he couldn't check anything. So his partner, Jeremy Boring, says, I called up one of his security people to tell him so he should know what was going on. But they didn't know. He says, for 48 hours, I don't turn on any electric. I don't turn on any, devices. It was a news blackout. I didn't know what was happening. So we take away all of the distractions. Now, here's a thing that I get very often, especially when I used to run NCSY. A person says, I don't know, you talk about the beauty of Shabbos. I've been keeping Shabbos my whole life, and I never found it beautiful. Sure, because you weren't listening. You turned on the radio, but you left the room. Somebody tells me once, perfect Shabbos, I eat a fast, I make Kiddush, I eat a fast meal. There was a girl in Stern College. She told me the story. She eats a quick meal. She sleeps, gets up in the morning, makes Kiddush, has lunch, goes back to sleep, wakes up afterwards. So I didn't really enjoy Shabbos. Because your shmiras Shabbos is indistinguishable from being in a coma. Of course, if you sleep through Shabbos, you're not going to feel anything. You have to listen. And a person says, okay, I stay up for Shabbos, I still don't enjoy it. Okay. Maybe you need a course in spiritual appreciation. So you learn how to enjoy all of these things that we're doing. But as long as all these things are going on, so it's an old joke. I don't know if anybody will appreciate it anymore because this goes back to the time when there were fax machines. So, okay, that's how old this joke is. So a guy's walking down the street and he sees somebody holding his hand. He's going, hey, Bob, how are things going? Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. Maybe we'll get together for lunch. And I said, what are you doing? So I'm talking on the phone. He says, there's no phone. He goes, you still use a phone? He says, I have the hearing device put into my thumb. I have the speaker put into my pinky. I've got the dial right here under the surface of my skin. I just dial the number and I can talk without a phone. He says, wow, that's amazing. Walks down the street and he sees a guy saying, I don't know, Harry, what are you thinking about IBM? Do you think I should buy some? I have a couple of shares of this, and we should this. He says, you talking to yourself? He says, no, I'm talking on the phone. He goes, you're not even using your hand. He goes, that's 6 months old. So I have a hearing device implanted in my ear. I have a speaking device put into my larynx. I have the dial put into my brain. I just have to think the number and I can start talking. Wow, that's amazing. Walks down the street, sees somebody bent over in pain going, Says, mister, are you okay? He says, yeah, I'm getting a fax. Anyway, what does this mean? What this means is people are so busy. They're so busy. They're so distracted. They miss everything that's happening around them. I was in Maine, in Bah Harbor, and it's a beautiful area. And they rent out these motorboats and speedboats. And I remember looking at this one tourist. He's standing up in his speedboat. His speedboat is just zooming along, and he's holding his camera. He's missing the experience because he's taking pictures. Yeah. I have been to chuppahs where you can't see what's going on because the photographers and video guys taking over the chuppah. You can't even see what's happening. One guy said to me, I always walk up straight and I watch the little window on the camera. That's how I see what's happening out of the chuppah. You missed the whole thing because people would rather watch it later instead of live it now. Sometimes they used to add taglines to their email. I remember somebody had the tagline, life is what happens while you're making plans. And people are so busy doing other stuff that they miss life. And it slips away. Shabbos is, stop and look and consider and think about what life is about because people are so busy going someplace, they don't have time to think if that's where they want to go. And Shabbos, because we can't do any malachas, forces us to become people for at least those 25 hours. And that, of course, brings us to our question and answer part of our program. Our first question is by Chaya S. You mentioned in a previous episode that the older generation isn't wanted in chinuch anymore. That's me. Rather, the young Rabbeim and teachers that can relate to the students. What can we do about this? For this is the opposite of Yiddishkeit! ! Absolutely. Of course, it's the opposite. The idea is, like we say in the Seder, Kolonim Chachamim, Kolonim Vonim, Kolonim Zakenim, and Kolonim Yodim and Satayra. So one of those levels is called Zakenim. What does that mean? It's life experience. I've had kids who have gotten into trouble with different teachers and different things, and Rabbi Weinbach said to me once, an older teacher wouldn't have had this problem. They have experience. I want to give a shout out to my niece, Tova Khan. She chose, when everybody was going off to Israel, to go to Yavna in Cleveland. And she said to me, I don't need to go to Israel and have some, 19, 20-year-old lady teach me. When you go to Yavna, you're having people who have years and years of experience. So they used to give us a test in Rashi Bakiyas. And, we didn't take it that seriously, And one of the teachers said, she goes, you don't know Chumash and Rashi? How would we have gotten through Auschwitz without Chumash and Rashi? And he was like, oh boy. There's a certain voice of experience that you get. The famous story of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky on the plane, who was sitting next to a professor at Hebrew University. And Rabbi Yaakov's grandson kept coming over to check on him, make sure he was okay. Does he need this? Does he need that? And finally the professor said, if my grandson was here, he wouldn't want anyone to know that we were related. So Rabbi Yaakov said, sure, because you believe in evolution. So you come from monkeys. So you're a bigger monkey than he is. You're 2 generations closer to a monkey. We believe in Mamad Har Sinai. And my grandson knows I'm 2 generations closer to the revelation. I once heard a friend say, when he was talking about Rav Ruderman, his Rebbe, he said, when you shook his hand, you shook the hand that shook the hand of the Alto Slobodka. People can bring us back to times that we can only read in history books. Dovid Soloveitchik, when he would give Musar, he would stop at some point and say, what can I expect from you boys? What have you ever seen? I once saw Reb Baruch Ber come out of the bathroom and make an Asher Yotzar. It changed my life. So how do we change it? We need a mapecha. We need to go back to the beginning and rethink our entire chinuch system, how it works and what the purpose is. The fact that you see Rosh Yeshiva running around trying to recruit Bachrim and beg them to come to the yeshivas, this never happened in Jewish history. You came to learn Torah by a Rosh Yeshiva. And, because you wanted to learn from him. Not because it was good for Shidduchim for me to be in this yeshiva or that yeshiva. Nobody cared. You wanted to be by this Rosh Yeshiva. You wanted to be by this Magid Shir. You wanted to gain from their Torah. And now you have these 17-year-olds saying, why should I come to your yeshiva? When do you come from me? Well, we have a very fine level. Olam hafach re'isi, as the Gemara says. went to Olam Haba, and I saw an upside down world. This world, it's all just crazy. How do we solve the problem? Well, if they ever put me in charge of the world, this is on my list. Not at the top of my list. Top of my list is death penalty for double parking. But I don't know how we change it. I can point out the problems. I've had people over the years tell me that I'm negative, and I said, no, I'm a social critic. I have a forum, and I try to raise the problems. I don't know how to fix it other than to try to speak to individuals and have them re-examine, what they're doing. I'll give another shout out, actually, to Tohu's brother, Rabbi Orlofsky. And he was accepted to go to Brisk, big Brisk, not one of the baby Brisks, the real Avram Yeshua's Brisk. And instead he decided to go to Rabbi Tzvi, which does not have the same reputation. And they were like, well, you could go to Brisk. And he goes, yeah, but if Rabbi Tzvi gives a mahalach in learning, I could go there and gain tremendous amount of my learning. And people were like, so what? You could go to Brisk. Who cares if you learn anything? And that's how it works today, unfortunately. So yeah, we need to re-examine this, and maybe I'll give a shout out to my good friend Ari Edelman and his kids, who have asked me to do a series. I did a series on how to choose a seminary, how to choose a yeshiva. So this will be part of that series. But right now I'm doing Shabbos because of the situation. But I have not forgotten you. We'll get there. Okay. Our next question is by Anonymous. What is your understanding of arvus? If a Jew on the other side of the planet does something wrong, why is that my fault? Why are we all punished together? What happened to the concept of personal responsibility? There definitely is a concept of personal responsibility. Of course. Person does an avera, he's going to get punished. But I want you to think about this for a moment. Rashi says, why was Dinah raped and kidnapped? So she was a Yitzonis. She was going out. What was she going out in a Goyish town, Good, she was going with the girls just to see what was happening, but you put yourself out in the public like that. That's what Dinah did. And then Rashi later says, Yaakov says, Hashem says, go back to Beis El and bring the korbanos that you promised, and, don't forget. And he says, because you delayed, this is what happened to Dinah. So was it Yaakov's fault or was it Dinah's fault? And the answer is, when a tragedy happened, it affects everybody. It affects the person. It affects their parents. It affects the people around them. And, a father dies and it changes the wife's, the children, his brothers, his parents, changes everybody's life all around them, And it's something to really consider, that you many different contributions. Therefore, Bisrael Salanta told the boys who were learning yeshiva, learn stark so that the balabatim in Paris don't intermarry. So they weren't doing kiruv. The answer is, if you are stark enough in your Yiddishkeit, it'll spread to the next town and the next town and the next town. And by the time it hits France, there'll at least be enough sensitivity that people won't intermarry. So we're responsible for everybody. We have to take into it everyone. Do they have to take responsibility for themselves too? Sure. But if we don't care about other people, I've told this story in the past, so you'll forgive me for repeating. I was once at a youth group, and they were doing values clarifications. Values clarifications, they tell a story, and there's no right or wrong answer. What do you think? And based on what you think, it's supposed to reveal, your value system. Yeah. Okay, here's the story. Romeo loves Juliet, but Romeo is on Crocodile Island, and you can't get across to Crocodile Island except by the ferry. Otherwise, the crocodiles will eat you. And Juliet misses Romeo so much, she doesn't know what to do. And she goes to the boatman. She says, I'll pay you whatever you want. And he has only one thing. He wants Juliet to sleep with him. And she's so torn because she doesn't want to do this, but she wants to get to Romeo and she's not sure what to do. And she asks wise Ivan. Wise Ivan says, I don't want to get involved. So she feels she has no choice. And she pays the boatman's price and she goes across. And when she gets to the island, Romeo is so happy to see her. He says, but how did you convince the boatman? And she tells him. And Romeo casts her away. And now after she made this tremendous sacrifice, Romeo is throwing her away. She's broken. She goes to her friend Sluggo in tears, and Sluggo feels so bad for her that he beats up Romeo to an inch of his life. And as the sun sets, Juliet is laughing that Romeo got what was coming to him. The end. The question is, who's the worst person in the story? So everybody was arguing Juliet. Not only did she do this thing and then she wanted to see him beaten up. Some people say Sluggo because, there's never an excuse for violence. Some say Romeo. What everyone else did, they were motivated by desire. He was motivated only by disdain. And Anyway, when I heard the question, I immediately said, wise Ivan. No, apparently nobody says that. And the guy looked at me and says, wise Ivan? I said, he's the only one who could have prevented this, but he didn't want to get involved. So he says to me, in your value system, there's nothing worse than being able to help somebody and not. That's true. I always look at a situation and say, how could I possibly help this person? And so I always try to make an effort to speak to people and say things. So the Gemara says that when it was time for the Churban, the Kodesh Baruch Hu told the Malach, go put an ice on the head of every tzaddik, so they will be saved from the destruction. And the Malach says, but they didn't give Teichacha. They didn't try to get people to come back to the good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I know it wouldn't have helped. He says, but they didn't. He says, you're right. Put an ice on their head and they'll be the first to die. Why don't you care? Why don't you care about somebody? I was speaking at a Havdalah at a leadership Shabbaton in California in 1986. And at Havdalah, so I told the following idea. I said, okay, you guys are all the leaders of NCSY, and let's face it, some of you are, Moranos. You keep Shabbos in secret. You don't let anyone in your school know about it. So, fine, you go to your Shabbatonim, you learn, you keep Shabbos, and you manage to avoid letting anyone know. At the end of your life, you get up to Shemayim. And of course, you'll get on the express line, because you guys are big tzaddikim, And as you're going towards your final judgment, you pass a kid who was in your class. And he grabs you by your celestial sleeve. And he says, wait a second, you knew about this? He says, yeah. You knew about Torah and Judaism and God and Olam Haba, and you knew all this stuff? Because, yeah. So all those Friday nights when you said you weren't going to go out with us because you had to study for a test, really you were keeping Shabbos? Because, yeah. So why didn't you ever tell us? I didn't think you would listen. I thought you'd make fun of us. And the kid says, maybe I would have. But maybe I would have listened. Maybe I would have come with you to a Shabbaton. Maybe I would have become frum, and I'd have frum children and frum grandchildren. Maybe I'd be on that line with you. I can't say for sure, but wasn't I worth the chance? At the end, some kid said to me, Rabbi, you play dirty. I said, 100% I do. So that's what Arvis means. Arvis means that you may not be able to solve the problem, but try. Try. Say something. Reach out to somebody. So that's the challenge of Arvis, where we have to take responsibility. Whether or not we can change it. Lo alechem l'chal ligmar. V'lo ata ben chorin livatel mimenu. V'lo ata ben chorin. Yeah, you have to try. Have to try. That's called responsibility. So if I can't, I can't. But if we are strong enough and make a strong enough impression, then we can change the world around us. And if we don't, that's what we're held responsible for. Okay, so that does it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can leave a comment. You can ask a question. You can sponsor a podcast. You can sponsor the question and answer. You can sponsor the 5-minute Bereshis, Parsha insights. You can join one of the online shiurim. And every now and then I see somebody join, the Tefillah series or the Mesilas Yesharim. It's always nice to see new faces. And that's it for now. Until next time, I am Rabbi Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again, it's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.